Tuesday, October 24th, City Hall, second floor. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gray,
Here.
Commissioner Highfield,
Muted her.
Here.
thank you.
Thank
Councilor
you. Excuse me.
Representative Schultz.
Here.
Manager Houseman,
Here.
Engineer Selly.
Here.
I do note Commissioner Kesnick is excused absence and Commissioner Shaw may be joining us shortly. So I will keep an eye on that. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, review and possible action relating to the minutes of the October 10, 2023 regular Plan Commission meeting.
I move approval of the minutes from the meeting.
I'll second.
Oh, man, lots of seconds. All right, thank you. We've got a motion and a second by Engineer Selly. Any further questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Number 4 is review and possible action relating to the conditional use permit to accommodate building a new Department of Public Works and Parks Operations facility at 600 Talcott Avenue. This is CUP 2023-02. Engineer Selly.
Thank you. The facility that we're looking at, I'll just throw this up here so we can kind of stare at this while I do a little bit of description here. The process that we're working through is a conditional use process for this facility because in our zoning code that is required for the institutional zoning when a building is over 50,000 square feet. This is the last approval that we're looking for on the building. Commission will recall we had the right-of-way vacation of James Place that was heard here and approved by the City Council. We've had the CSM combining all the lots that was also heard here and approved here by Planning Commission and City Council. And then we had the rezoning request that was heard here and moved on to City Council and approved through the first reading there at City Council. So this evening is our final request for review and the final approval needed for this facility through the Planning Commission and City Council process. So a couple of things, the memo went through as usual and kind of compared all the various attributes of this design to our zoning code. I'll note just a couple of those that will appear later on as either conditions or discussion items. The first was the throat depth in the parking lot standards, which is shorter than the required minimum of 25 feet. We'll talk about that in a moment as to the reasoning as to why. The next was under the outdoor storage and screening standards. We do not have a trash containment structure shown on the site. We may put that in. We are debating whether to put that inside a building. So I can assure you that that will be dealt with in design, but we're kind of trying to figure out where to put that, to be quite honest with you. The next was a compatibility report was not required for this under the large development standards. That compatibility report is necessary usually for new developments or developments that are changing the use significantly, meaning the hours of operation or the number of trips to the site or things of that nature. In this situation, we're simply building a new building, but the number of employees, the number of trips to the site, and the overall impact on the neighborhood will remain the same. So Planning Commission will discuss the merits of allowing that particular requirement to be relaxed in this situation. There are 5 different conditions that are a part of the conditional use. I'll read these briefly and paraphrase. The Planning Commission should determine their viewpoint with respect to these 5 different conditions. The first is that the requested use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. The second is that the requested use would not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on the property in the area. And that's where a number of factors related to traffic, parking, public improvements, environmental factors, et cetera, come into play. The third is that it maintains the desired consistency of land use, intensities, and impacts as related to the environment around the subject property. The fourth is that the requested use is located in an area that will be adequately served by and will not impose an undue burden on any public available utilities or facilities in the area. And the fifth is that the potential public benefits of the requested use outweigh any potential adverse impacts of the requested use. I can say in all of these, as was documented in the memo, that staff believe these conditions are in fact met for this requested conditional use. The two items I should note, actually, from the public notice standpoint, we did conduct a public hearing on this matter at our October 10th meeting. I don't believe we had anybody speak publicly at that meeting. We have had some neighbors reach out in various other meetings, mostly related to just questions as you would expect regarding the layout of the site, the potential ingress and egress, whether we would be increasing traffic and things of that nature. All fairly simple questions, and we provided those residents with the information that you have here, frankly. So they felt like they had all of the available information. Last are those two discussion points that I brought up earlier. The first is the Planning Commission should discuss making an exception to the minimum required throat depth. And I'll bring that up here to show exactly what we're talking about on the site plan. The layout of the site in this situation doesn't quite allow us to engage or to meet this requirement. Show employee parking here. The throat depth is this distance here. So it's intended when you have a very busy site, and we ran into this with Quick Trip most recently on Janesville Avenue. When you have a site that has a lot of trips coming in and out, that throat depth maintains kind of an orderly point of ingress and egress. So you actually get traffic that will queue. That's the intended use or intention, I guess, of that throat depth. Here, we don't expect a lot of trips. We'll have this is employee parking. Generally speaking, we'll get 1 or 2 vendors per day that will come to the site and about the same number of residents as well. So the throat depth, if we were to try to maintain that required standard, would push us into the existing egress from the building. And so we, on the city staff side of things, felt like it was appropriate to relax that requirement in this situation. The second is the compatibility report for large developments. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, this includes a traffic impact analysis and various other conditions, I guess, of a development that would be changing the neighborhood significantly. We didn't feel that we were changing the neighborhood significantly here, other than the buildings themselves. And so the compatibility analysis, we certainly are building a facility that has existed here for many decades, but we're changing the look of it. But the number of trips, the number of employees, and all of those sorts of factors that typically can create some challenges for either a new development or a significant scaling up of an existing development were not present here. So we did not develop a compatibility report. So I'd like to hear the thoughts of Plan Commission, I guess, with respect to those two requested exceptions. And then when we get toward the recommended area, as we normally do, we have a few required conditions of the approval. The first is, as noted above, the throat depth and the waiver of the compatibility report. The second is the landscaping points. As we've done with other projects, it can be challenging to fit all of the landscaping into the appropriate areas. In this situation, we are exceeding the number of landscaping points in all areas except for that required street frontage, which is a little bit of a challenge down along this section of Talcott Street here. But we are exceeding the required landscaping in all other areas. So we'd request that condition be allowed. Then the dumpster enclosures I mentioned earlier, the city does have to make a decision on that and kind of formally document such. If we are going to put a dumpster outside, we will have an enclosure as required by the code, or we may put that inside the building. The last is the signage plans, which we always have. We will not come forward at this time with the signage plans for the facility, but we do intend to come back to Planning Commission with a signage plan for your approval. The erosion control plan by the, the erosion control permit from DNR and the stormwater permit requirements, those are forthcoming. As I can talk about here briefly, the plan for demolition on the site is fairly complicated, and that is what's driving the erosion control plan in particular. So we're going to have some intricate staging, I guess, with the existing facility here remaining in place during active construction. We'll be removing the existing truck shed, preserving the parks area, as we've talked about before, demolishing the Quonset hut and demolishing these two buildings on the adjoining property that was previously owned by NASCO. So disturbance on the area will occur in a number of stages, and minimizing the amount of disturbance on the area is what we need to be cognizant of in that erosion control plan. So that'll come before city staff, and really is critical in the bid documents before they go out, so the contractor understands the plan that they'll have to adhere to. And then on the stormwater side of things, we are putting all of the stormwater from the site into a stormwater basin, which is located up here in the upper right-hand corner. We also had some small improvements to some basins down in this area. So although not required, because this is a redevelopment site, as Planning Commission will note in our previous site plan reviews, we've asked people to make meaningful improvements to stormwater on the site, and they have in just about every instance. We certainly are requiring the same of ourselves and are doing that. I would like to see the quantified report of how much pollution reduction we're getting in those stormwater ponds. So that'll be something that'll come before me and was not part of the submittal this evening. So a few things that are still kind of laying out there, but nothing too concerning. So with that, I'd be happy to take questions of Planning Commission of the design itself. I would like to talk specifically about those exceptions for the throat depth and the compatibility report, and then any specific questions related to the zoning code or the conditional use process as well. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
So I think we should start with the actual site plan. Any questions on the site plan, and then we'll move on to those exceptions and then the conditions. So any questions from the Plan Commission for Engineer Selly on the site plan that requires this conditional use permit?
I don't know if this is a site plan question or not. I'm just curious, were there any soil contamination issues that had to be dealt with to redevelop this land?
There were not. We didn't have, so the soil, the way you look at contamination is whether there's presence to indicate that you should search for it. And we did not have anything there that indicated we should be searching for it. So
No
we
old
didn't.
fuel pumps or?
We do have a fuel facility that is there, but that fuel facility has been inspected and is tested pretty consistently. So we don't expect there to be any leaking storage tanks under there. So we didn't do it. The short answer is we don't believe there are any contaminated materials, but we also didn't go looking for them because there wasn't reason to.
Do the buildings themselves that you're going to be removing have contamination issues?
They likely do. We did pass a contract for a company to come in and do hazardous materials inspections of all those buildings that are going to be demoed. So we expect there to be probably asbestos.
All right.
Is the main concern there. Shouldn't be much else besides that.
Okay.
Any other questions from the Plan Commission relating to the site plan or the conditional use permit? Okay, moving on to questions or comments, considerations relating to waiving the minimum required throat depth of 25 feet and the compatibility, waiving the requirement for a compatibility report for large developments greater than 50,000 square feet.
So the throat depth requirement is 25 feet?
That's correct. And we're
And
at
what are we actually proposing to put in?
we're at about 10 feet right now. Let me pull that back.
10 feet?
Correct.
And the throat itself is
It's this distance.
the
right
width
here.
of the opening, or it's the depth into the actual parking lot from the
Correct.
street?
Yep. So in a situation where you have a lot of traffic coming in, this throat depth being 25 feet allows that traffic. So you queue basically 1 or 2 vehicles in here, and it kind of keeps the free for all to the exits from happening. In this situation, we kept it at 10 feet. That gains an extra parking stall for us, and it keeps us from getting too far to the north on the site over here.
And you don't see any problem with that?
I do not, because the trips that we have coming in are really all day trips, right? We don't have folks that are coming in, staying for 5 minutes and then leaving. So I think the intention of the throat depth is important within our zoning code. But any other situation like this, I would also see the same or have the same opinion, I guess, where you have employee parking, that throat depth is a little less concerning as opposed to patron parking situations.
Okay.
Any questions relating to waiving the compatibility report? Okay, moving on to the conditions, as Engineer Sully mentioned, there are in the staff report on page 8, there are recommended conditions of approval of this conditional use permit. And those are that the Plan Commission accepts the findings for the conditional use permit as included above in the staff report, that the Plan Commission affords the 2 exceptions noted above relating to throat depth of the parking lot and waiver of the compatibility report requirement, allowing less than the required street frontage for landscaping points due to the proposed use of exceeding all other point standards for the paved area building foundations and yard requirements. And that the city will provide either a dumpster enclosure that meets the requirements of the code, or those trash receptacles will be stored within a building. And that the applicant, meaning the city, will provide a signage plan for approval by city staff, and that the erosion control plan be approved by the DNR and city staff prior to beginning land disturbing activities. Are there any other recommendations from the Plan Commission for conditions of approval for this project?
I move approval of the conditional use for this public works building, subject to the conditions that have just been enumerated.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any further discussion or questions by the Plan Commission?
I have got one question, and maybe this isn't the right forum or situation to bring this topic up regarding the DPW. We've had some public comments, I guess, related to the cost of this project. One of the items related to conditional use is the exterior building design standards, to include like the material being used on the exterior. As some people I talked to have seen this design roll out, that they felt it was, an initial upfront cost. And I think, could we go with cheaper materials that would probably require a zoning change? But I guess my other concern is it's not just the cost of building it, it's also the maintenance over the long term. I've been trying to look up and find resources or studies that show that one type of exterior wall or building design is better than the other. And what I'm finding is that most of the articles and whatnot state that generally steel is better, but those articles typically come from steel building companies that publish, their articles or studies showing that steel siding and roof and whatever is better. While others state that the proposed aggregate precast wall design that's proposed, articles will state those are better. They're more efficient. They're easier for manufacture, et cetera, et cetera. But again, those articles come from companies that make precast, sided wall buildings. I guess moving forward, will there be a point in time that we can maybe see? Yeah, I'd like to get to a point where we're making a good cost benefit analysis, with, possible different exterior building design standards, I guess, for surface material. Just so I guess my warm and fuzzy, I just want to make sure that we're making the right financial decision, that, we're picking something that doesn't require a lot of maintenance, doesn't cost a lot over not only just the upfront cost of building, but also the long-term cost of maintenance and keeping the building operating for the duration of the proposal.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
what you're getting at is with any significant investment by the city, that there is some indication of that cost benefit analysis. And I think that's something that our architect is probably very well versed in, who runs in these circles and can probably provide that. So I'll definitely look into that, Councilman Schultz, and see if we can get something in writing that answers a few of those questions.
Okay, much appreciated.
Okay, there is a motion and a second on the floor of approval of this conditional use permit, subject to the conditions recommended in the staff report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Next item is review and possible recommendation to the city council relating to an extraterritorial certified survey map for the property located at W6770 Pond Road. This is CSM 2023-13.
Yeah, thank you. This is an extraterritorial certified survey map. So you can see here roughly the location relative to the city boundaries. Anything within 1.5 miles of the city comes before Planning Commission and City Council. Anything in the 1.5 to 3 mile area goes directly to Manager Houseman and myself for approval, and then we just simply pass it along to the City Council as an FYI, because that's well outside of any of our planning areas. This particular request is just simply to break off, I think it's a second parcel. This has come before us within the last couple of years, I think, breaking off the residential area from the larger farm, and then this breaks off another small area from the residential area, as can be seen here. There really isn't anything from a long-term planning standpoint that this affects from the city's point of view, and we would be supportive of an approval from the Planning Commission on this.
Do you know how large the parent parcel is, the remaining parent parcel?
I don't know if it's included in here or not. Let me zoom in. No, they don't have anything in there. I would guess somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 acres, 6 to 8 would be my guess. I had to make such.
Any questions or comments from the Planning Commission on this item? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to make a positive recommendation to the City Council to approve this extraterritorial certified survey map for the property located at West 6770 Pond Road.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any final questions or comments from the Planning Commission? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item is adjournment.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 4:24 PM. Thank you, everybody.